Hey everyone, Dr. Stone and Jim Laird back. Today we are going to be talking our final episode about physical activity and training and its importance for overall fitness and longevity.
Oh, this is a long one. This is a long one.
Don't make it too long. We don't want to make it too complicated, Jim.
We won't make it too complicated. It's pretty simple. If you just want to look good and feel good, um, you need to increase your daily activity. I mean, that's why I always recommend. I still stand efforting walk 10 minutes 3 times a day. I mean, if you look at like videos of people from the 1950s and 60s, there wasn't any overweight people at all. If you like type in beach pictures, and there weren't that many people working out. Like
That's
women
right.
particularly didn't work out. So they tended to live a more outdoor life. They tended to do more labor, a lot of them washed a lot of their clothes themselves. They hung them up to dry. They had gardens, they mowed grass. Most of them had really active jobs. So like the most important part about health is doing activity daily.
Right.
And then some sort of resistance training where you're working out a couple times a week. It doesn't have to be insane. Obviously, if you're trying to drive performance, that's a totally different animal. But most people just need to get down on the floor and move around. And I can add a few examples of things you can do on the floor that'll really help. But, doing different activities, playing golf, frisbee golf, depending on your level, like tennis, pickleball, all these things are great. Like you want to play something like that a couple times a week. You want to walk a lot. Maybe you go for a jog every once in a while if you have the ability to do that. But you want to be constantly active, right?
To go back to your point about how people were and what they looked like,
Right.
the key there is they did low weight or low intensity exercise for long periods.
Well,
And they would have occasional intense exercise and intense exertion.
Well, it was just life. It was manual labor. It wasn't exercise. It was like our lives used to be exercise. Like people built their own houses, people grew their own gardens. Like if you're out tilling a garden all day, now you hit a button and the food shows up at your door, right?
That's right.
So we have outsourced our exercise. We basically, with our modern world, we don't build our own houses anymore. We don't grow our own food. We don't, half people don't even walk. People used to walk everywhere back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Like, kids would walk a couple miles to school every day. Like now everyone's driven everywhere. So we've outsourced everything and we don't do anything ourselves anymore. And that's the biggest problem. And then they try and use exercise to make up for that. So that's why I'm saying is it's important for you to go out and walk every day, 3 times a day for 10 minutes. It's important for you to mow your grass. That's a really great way to get some extra work in, right? And then, to do things, to have, manual labor activities. It doesn't need to be intense. And then you add some, back in the day, it was farm work. I've always joked with people that I was going to open a farm and pay people to work on it or charge people to work on it.
Right.
Like you come to my farm and you get to bale hay and you get to carry buckets. And I mean, that's essentially what people do when they go to the gym is they're essentially doing farm labor, right?
Right.
But strength training is super important. You need to challenge yourself for bone density to keep muscle mass. But all this stuff would have happened in your normal life, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Now people, go to a gym to do that specifically. We've got more people exercising now, but we have more people that are sick and overweight than ever before.
That's right. And that goes back to the environment and the diet that we've talked about in prior episodes.
Yeah, the whole thing. Like 40s and 50s, people are eating less processed food. They're cooking their food all themselves. They're not doing Uber Eats and having the stuff delivered to their house. So it's work to actually eat. It's work to have shelter. Now everything's provided for you. You don't have to do any work for it, right?
Right.
So that's a big part of it. But I think people try to out exercise a bad lifestyle, and using exercise to try and fix a lifestyle problem is like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs to be stitched. And that's the biggest thing I see is people basically go to these high intensity boot camps, and there's nothing wrong with having some intensity. One, if you're prepared. Two, if it's sprinkled in the right dose, right? But they go to these, I'm not eating good. I'm not sleeping, but I'm gaining weight. I'm going to go do these hardcore interval training sessions, and they just bury themselves, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to improve my sleep. I'm going to, improve my diet. I'm going to eat more protein at every meal. I'm going to walk outside. And the lifestyle change is what actually is the foundation of the, improvement in health, improvement in fitness. People they'll use exercise to try and make up for their shitty lifestyle, and it very rarely ends well.
That's right. And it's like thinking that you're going to fix the problem with your car by driving it harder.
Correct.
It doesn't work. It doesn't end well.
No.
And it goes back to young people get away with this.
Yes.
Because they have so much physiological reserve, such low heteroplasmy rates in their mitochondria.
I would say young people used to get away with it, but I think
kids used to get away with it more.
Correct.
But they still and always will get away with it more than older people.
Correct. But I think it's going to get really bad because kids aren't getting the time outside. They aren't playing outside. They're not building up their GPP, their general physical preparedness. They're not getting that resiliency from being outside. So, we're seeing kids with autoimmune diseases like at 10, 12, like crazy, right? So, but you're right. Young people can get away with burning the candle at both ends, and they turn 30, 35, and then all of a sudden the wheels start coming off the wagon.
Not to mention 40, 50, 60.
Right.
And so then when we start looking at their nutritional panels, we start to see what a hole they've dug themselves into. And that's why they can't just double down on exercise and get the same results.
Right. Well, not only the nutritional part of it, stress. Like a lot of the people we work with are high-level executives that have just, 10, 12-hour work days with very little sleep for years and years and years and years. And they've got tons of money in the bank, but they can barely get out of bed. And they're like, what can I do to, just to save myself?
Yeah, and we have to work with them very
right. And we have to schedule rest time. We have to schedule low-level physical activity. The resting heart rate is a big way to look at, for me, I'm 250 pounds. I have a resting heart rate overnight in the 50s, which is really good. And a lot of that is because of my childhood, spending a lot of time working on farms and then playing different sports, wrestling and all those things. And I walk a lot. I've been a little lazy here lately with it, but resting heart rate for women is going to be a little bit higher. So if your resting heart rate is, a woman should be about 60 resting heart rate.
Sure.
Okay.
Should.
Yeah.
Right.
But if
40s, 50s.
Yeah. If your resting heart rate is 80, 90, you definitely need to do more walking. You need to do more relaxed breathing. You need to bring that, build your work capacity up so that your heart isn't working so hard.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of that comes down to micronutrient issues that are then affecting their autonomic balance. The potassium, magnesium, calcium stores.
Absolutely. Well, we see it a lot in kids now because they don't play on their own. And a lot of it too is from doing too much high intensity training, right? They'll do tons of intervals. And so they're doing this kind of stuff all the time. And the aerobic base is what gives you the ability to do those intervals and then their heart rate come back down quickly. If you don't have the aerobic base, you're going to have to go anaerobic faster. And then that's just harder on your system. Your system is revved up a lot more. So we'll see like a lot of MMA fighters that'll do too much high intensity work, or we'll have like soccer kids that all they do is they're being coached all the time. So it's like a high stress kind of environment. So they're not getting like the easy, like they're playing with their friends and playing tag, and they're getting that, or riding their bike for hours, or, that's what builds up that aerobic system to handle the stress of the high intensity work. But a lot of times when kids aren't allowed to play on their own, they get too much of that, and then their heart rate just keeps going up and up and up. And I've worked with a kid who's a wrestler who was 16 years old, and he had like 120 resting heart rate, and we had to back his intervals down completely. Like I took his intervals away and I just had him start doing 30 to 40 minutes of easy cardio every day. And his heart rate literally dropped like 50% in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And he had more gas in wrestling. He was like, I can't believe this. I'm not doing I got him down to doing like 2 4-minute aerodyne sessions, like 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, like twice a week. Plus his wrestling practice too is a lot of interval type stuff, right?
Right.
He didn't have any aerobic engine at all. His resting heart rate was like close to 100.
We'll see the same thing with food, right? Get people to eat more and they'll lose weight.
Yeah.
And we don't really like to talk about weight loss. We like to talk about improved body composition.
Correct.
Same difference.
Well, yeah, you just have people that their whole system, all their machinery is so broken because they've been starved of micronutrients and starved of essential amino acids for so long. And once they start eating food, their body just gets in a better place, gets healthy, and they drop weight.
Yeah, and with regards to the physical exercise, I see a lot of people being trained into dysfunctional patterns in their youth, whether that's as a child, teenager, or young adult, in college, community, high school, school
Well,
sports.
and people have to realize that high level sports is not healthy. It's not.
It's true.
It's
We don't see those people living very long.
well, not necessarily. There's a lot of data that contradicts itself, but like if you're taking sports to the very high level extremes, it's not about health. It's about performance.
Right.
And that's a totally different animal, right? And then it's about mitigating risks. Like offensive linemen in the NFL are not healthy. Sumo wrestlers are not healthy. High level gymnasts have back fractures, and they blow their ankles and knees out. And I mean, this just comes with the sport, right? So, but for most people that are on here, you just want to look good naked. You want to look good and feel good. So, strength train 2 to 3 days a week in a reasonable manner. You don't need to be maxing out or anything like that. You need to make sure you understand zone of apposition, where your rib cage and your belly button are together for most of your training. Most people will be extended, so they're arching on everything. That's something,
and the ribs will flare.
Yeah, that's something that bodybuilders do and powerlifters to create more leverage to get stronger. But you want to make sure that you're able to move in a way where your rib cage and your belly button are lined up, so that your shoulder blades, your pelvis work more efficiently, and you're not getting stuck in one pattern. That's why it's important to do variety of things, like you're alternating your presses. You're doing a variety of different movements. You do strength training 2 to 3 times a week. You walk every day, and you do some sort of, aerodyne bike or rowing machine for, 10, 20 seconds hard, rest a minute. You do that like once or twice a week, and that's going to take care of it for most people. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but the biggest thing is like go out and play with your kids, play tennis, play pickleball, make it fun. You don't want to be that guy that's on the elliptical for freaking 45 minutes to an hour every day. I mean, that just drive me insane.
Yeah. The other thing I've seen, that you really made me aware of is how much people are exercising in a way that drives a pattern or strategy in their posture.
Correct.
Or their alignment of their structure.
Correct.
Muscles.
That's the one
that creates joint dysfunction and pain,
right?
Which then can have autonomic consequences for their central nervous system. We just recently saw somebody who was going in and out of this really nasty heart rhythm because of a postural problem,
right?
And not many people would be able to pick up on that.
Yeah, a strategy. So your body, when your body is presented with a problem, it's going to find a way to get the problem solved. Okay, and it doesn't really look at how it gets the problem done. The body doesn't go, well, if I do it this way, 6 months from now, my back's going to be destroyed. For example, kids playing outside in the front yard, tree falls on kid's trapped under the tree. Mom freaks out. She runs outside. She gets this huge surge of adrenaline. She jacks her head back, arches really hard, and then she picks the tree up off the kid because she uses her spine to create massive amounts of stability. And she's able to lift the tree off the kid. The kid's able to get out from under the tree. The problem is that strategy, you're very strong in that strategy, but people will load that in the gym. Okay, you'll see people, they're arched really hard. The problem is with that strategy is you're getting your stability from your joints. You're not getting it from like your structure, your like your musculature. So when you start jamming into hip capsules, you start jamming your shoulder blades together, you're jamming your back together to get your stability. Over time, there's consequences in that. When your pelvis is tipped forward and your rib cage is forward, okay, you don't have full access to your hips. Okay, your knee starts doing all sorts of funky stuff, and so does your ankle because the hip position drives knee and ankle function. Your scapula if you're arched and you're extended like this, or you have a flat T-spine, your scapula are concave. They're designed to rotate around your rib cage upwardly. If the middle of your body is not in a great position, it affects your scapula, the way it moves, and that affects your elbow. Most of the people I see, if they've got elbow, wrist problems, is because of how their middle is functioning, right? So if you understand what's called circumferential expansion, which is basically rib cage and belly button together, creating this canister, and then everything else moves and rotates, like you rotate through your shoulder blades, your pelvis moves, But most people are using this extended strategy for the most part to get things done. And then we also have an asymmetry. I'll try to make this as simple as possible. This is all you have to understand is we have more guts on our right. So we're going to have a tendency to camp on our right. So if all you're doing is the same movements over and over again, you're more than likely going to be loaded on your right, and you need to do things that pull you out of that pattern so that you don't get stuck in that strategy and you can't get out of it, right? So that's usually what happens to the body is when you're doing a lot of repetitive things. That's why variety of activity, that's why, like, because, you know, in bodybuilding and powerlifting, they don't really care about how you feel. It's all about lifting the most amount of weight, or it's about developing the biggest muscles. Everything like squats, your shoulder blades are pinched together, you're arched. Deadlifts, you're arched. You know, you're doing bench press, your shoulder blades are glued together, right? So that's why we want to add some things in. We're doing alternate dumbbell presses where we're shifting our pressure in our trunk. We're doing pull downs, like alternating pull downs, where we're shifting back and forth. So we're moving. This thorax is designed to move. That's why you see people like me, or powerlifters and bodybuilders, they walk like a freaking, you know, penguin, because they can't shift their thorax back and forth when they walk, because they're this big, stiff fire hydrant to lift the most amount of weight possible. So your body's going to adapt in a way to suit the task that you're trying to accomplish, right? That's why it's important, if you just want to look good and feel good, to do a number of different things. Go hiking, play pickleball, ride, you know, I'm not a huge fan of riding bikes. If you're a male and you ride a bike, make sure you get one with a male-friendly bike seat, because not fun. But, you know, walking, you know, all these things, and some lifting. You need to do a variety of things so you're not doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. That's where you end up getting yourself in trouble. And plus you get burned out if you're doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. You know?
Yeah, it's true. People get bored going to the gym.
Yeah.
They don't have to, because there's so much variety in there once you actually understand how to use it.
Correct.
And that's why, as much as I like what we're doing here and giving people some basic information, in a way, I hate that people may watch this and get the idea that this covers what they need to know. They really need time with you to actually train.
Sure.
They need to spend.
Or some coach, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but how many coaches do you pick apart when we're at the gym? Their technique, what they're having people do, how they're having them do it. I mean, the reality, having now trained with you and having treated many patients who are training with you, you offer them a different experience. You offer them a different perspective.
Thank you.
And you can't just pack that into a 45-minute.
Sure. Well, most coaches don't understand strategy, right? Mm-hmm. They don't understand how the body's getting the tasks done, and that strategy that might be okay, there's going to have certain consequences down the road. And you have to be very careful, because if you tell someone that somebody's going to get hurt because they're doing something, that placebo effect could cause that. But generally speaking, when people lose variability of a joint or variability of movement, just like, you know, I tell people all the time, is high blood pressure bad? And people are, oh yeah, it's really bad. Well, if I'm chasing you with an axe or a machete, it's not bad. It's great. If you're trying to go to sleep, it's bad, right? Now, so exercise is the same way. You actually, this is where it gets complicated, because I'm working with a high-level sprinter. I actually want to take variability away. I'm going to take away their ability to move side to side so they can go as fast as they can in a straight line, like a top fuel dragster, right? So it's simple, but it's not simple at the same time. But the problem is a lot of the reason why most women do not lift weights is because the coach immediately throws a bar on their back, and the woman is already stuck in the J-Lo position. And so she strengthens the J-Lo position, and in 3 weeks, her back's killing her.
That's right.
And then she quits, right? Whereas a lot of dudes will just keep pushing through. They'll be taking Tylenol and Advil and whatever. Like, dude, I'm just going to push through.
Well, then they blow a disc.
Yeah, that's possible.
And that's the thing about really great physical training, is you should feel better after you've trained, or not worse.
Correct. And that's, you know, like a lot of people get stuck in this, like, conception that they should feel like crap after they, you know, we talked about this yesterday, about people that are so exhausted and so burned out that the only time they feel good is when they're training. because they need that, dopamine, adrenaline rush. And then after they train, they're shot for like 2 or 3 days. And the people that train with me for 20 years, one of the things they would say to me, I love the fact that I always feel better after I leave the gym. And I always feel better the next day. I might feel a little sore. I might feel like I've done something.
Yeah.
But, for the average person that's not trying to set world records and not trying to be a professional athlete, you should feel more energized and better. And that's what people don't understand too, is like, if you train like an absolute maniac, all you're doing is taking away from your body's ability to recover from that training, right? So you want to do enough to adapt, but you don't want to push into your reserves so much that your body takes away from your ability to actually recover from your training.
Yeah.
So, it's an art. It's a nuance. That's why working with someone who has a lot of experience can look at your volume, can look at your intensity, and make sure, once again, just like diet, once again, just like lifestyle, is what you're doing sustainable over a long period of time.
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard is that it takes 30,000 repetitions to build a new movement pattern in the brain. And whether or not that's true, the point is that it takes a lot of time and a lot of repetitions to untrain bad postural habits, to untrain bad breathing mechanics, untrain bad dietary patterns.
Well, yeah, it just comes down to, with movement anyways, it comes down to just picking the right exercise. I mean, if I pick the right exercise, that comes from experience.
But even the right exercise done improperly can drive the same.
If it's the right exercise, there's no way someone's going to be able to do it improperly. If it's the right choice. Yeah, if it puts you in the position I need you to be in, it's almost impossible for that person to do it wrong.
That's the difference between people thinking they know what they need to do in the gym.
Well, and that's the hard thing, is it's like there's no right or wrong. There's just trade-offs. Right. So it's not like that is wrong. There's people that have set world records in the Olympics with really shitty mechanics. Right. That person's an outlier. They can do that. Right. So, it's really hard to give black and white answers. There's only principles, but for the most part, most people, one, they don't have a good foundation, and two, they don't have enough variability in certain movements. But then there's other people that have too much variability and they need to get rid of some of that variability. Like you have someone who's like a high level yogi who's like a wet noodle, who can bend in every single direction but can't pick their purse up off the ground, right? They're going to need to lose some of that noodle variability, right? Where if you got somebody like me who's a powerlifter who needs to move better, I don't need to do any more lifting. I need to do more stuff where I'm moving more, right? Shifting and moving type things. So it's it's highly individual, and it's a rabbit hole that you can fall into and never come out of, but you've got to basically figure out what's best for the individual and keep it simple. But once again, for most people, if they walk outside every day, a couple times a day, and they do something a couple times a week that's challenging, they're going to be happy with the results that they get.
It's true. So, any other closing thoughts?
Oh, we're closing the whole thing up?
Well, on the topic of physical activity, what else do you want to talk about?
I think that, I'd like to talk about, before we finish, one of the big problems we have today is kids don't play, right? So it's going to be, in my profession over the last 20 years, it's going to look more and more like PE, physical education, so what happens is when kids learn how to walk through rolling around on the floor, playing with their feet. And I always say the floor is the great teacher. Anytime somebody has any kind of issue, I always take them back to the floor, because the floor is actually how we learned how to walk. So I always take people to the floor first, right? It kind of takes gravity away. It kind of gets, especially if you're laying on your back, it allows you to get your belly button and your rib cage in a good position, which is what we want. And kids, because they don't play anymore and their sports are so structured, they're not learning these different patterns, right? So somebody who's in their 40s, 50s, 60s that played as a kid will pick things up so much faster. So the kids today, because they haven't, when you're presented with a problem, Like, so example, let's look at baseball. Okay. Um, Once your body learns how to do a double play, you don't have to go through every variation of a double play. Your brain will figure out, you know, we're doing a double play from this position. We're doing a double play from this position. We're doing a double play from here, from here. But if you've never done a double play at all, your body doesn't know what to do. So you've got these kids that have never moved in certain ways before, and then they get presented with these problems later on in life, and they've never had that. Whereas me, because I wrestled, because I played soccer, I did dance, I did gymnastics, I did all these things, I did hockey. My body's seen every type of movement possible, and I get presented with something now. My body goes, oh yeah, I've got that in storage way back here in the back of my head from thousands of years ago. And I might look a little shitty at first, but I'll pick it up right away. Well, the kids today have never had that experience before. So it's going to take them, some of them might never, ever get it. Like, it's going to take them twice as long to get that stuff. So that if you have children, it's very important that they get a variety of activity at a variety of different intensities. And a lot of it, up until about 16, it should be about fun and play based. And then after that, you can start, you want to give kids a wide variety. And then as they get older, like obviously Leland's not going to be a power lifter, right? He's going to be wrong body type. He's going to be more of a golfer, or, he probably would have been good at like throwing a javelin or something like that. Rock climbing would have been a great sport. So you gotta push people. Like, yesterday we were at the gym and I was talking to a young lady. I was like, you play volleyball? She's like, the girl was over 6 foot. She's like, no, I don't play soccer. They put her in soccer at 5, and then she just, instead of at 12 or 13, when she shoots over 6 foot, switching her to volleyball because it's a better sport for her, they kept her in soccer. And, most girls that are tall and lanky at 6 foot are not going to be a very good soccer player, but they're going to be a much better volleyball player. So you want to pick the sport that your child's body, like, I'm not going to be a swimmer. Like, it's just, maybe it's a sinking contest. That would be great. But,
or a cannonball competition.
Yeah, right. I'm more of a explosive power type athlete. I'd have been a great Olympic lifter because of my dimensions, but I powerlifted instead. But wrestling, explosive sports, football, things like that. So a lot of kids get forced into a sport because they signed up for it when they were 5 and they never played anything else, and they never got to experience. Most of your people that played in the NFL at a high level have played multiple sports. Like Tom Brady, played baseball. He played football. I think he played a little bit of soccer. Patrick Mahomes could have went to the pros in both baseball and football. Same with Kyler Murray. All these guys that are high level, they usually could have played, like Wayne Gretzky. He could have played baseball in the pros. They're just great athletes, right? So most people kind of forget about that. They want to put their kids in calculus only instead of giving them the entire spectrum of education.
Right. The play is really important.
Oh, it's even for adults too. Like,
it's very important for adults.
Well, like things
psychologically, when I hear that someone doesn't have any fun, doesn't play, I know that there's a huge psychosomatic component to their case, whether or not I ever get to.
Right, like even me recovering from my TBI that I had in June, me learning new skills, learning some new languages, playing chess against myself, getting down on the floor, moving in different ways helps the brain, mobilize and change the plasticity. So that you can develop new circuits and patterns. It's the same thing with kids. Like, kids develop their brains through movement and play. Things like dance, like social dance, things like dance and being creative. These are also important for brain development. And it's just something, because of our modern world, that we're taking away from people, is the joy of movement. And, getting out and moving and just doing stuff is super, super important for not only your physical health, but your mental well-being as well as your cognitive function.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a wrap.
Thanks for joining us.